Listen carefully because what you are about to hear is not being discussed honestly anywhere else, and it sets the stage for one of the most misunderstood moments in the XRP market cycle. Volume is dropping and the crowd is panicking while institutions are smiling. And if that sentence alone does not stop you in your tracks, then you are not paying attention to how real money moves. Because every single time volume collapses in an asset that is still being quietly built into global financial infrastructure, history shows that something massive is being prepared behind closed doors. Ask yourself why mainstream crypto media is suddenly obsessed with meme coins and noise while XRP volume quietly contracts. Ask yourself why BlackRock keeps expanding tokenization narratives, why the IMF keeps publishing papers about cross-border settlement efficiency, why the BIS keeps talking about interoperability, and why the SEC suddenly looks boxed into procedural silence. This is not coincidence, this is choreography, and volume dropping is not weakness. It is suppression and compression. The calm before a violent repricing that catches emotional traders completely off guard. And if you are still here right now, do not scroll, do not look away, because in the next minutes, I am going to decode exactly what declining volume historically signals for XRP holders who understand the long game. And before we go any further, do this one thing right now, tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment saying XRP holder. Because this channel is for people who want to see what is really happening, not what they are told to believe. Understand this, when volume dries up, it means sellers are exhausted and buyers are waiting for confirmation. It means liquidity is being pulled, not lost. It means the market is being reset for a narrative shift, and the insiders know it, which is why you see Ripple executives staying calm. Why on-chain data shows long-term wallets unmoved, and why institutional custody solutions keep expanding quietly. People hear volume down and think danger, but veterans hear volume down and think accumulation phase nearing ignition. This changes everything because volume does not disappear before death. It disappears before control is transferred, and the people who control timing are never the retail crowd. They are the same entities you hear whispered in regulatory corridors and banking summits. The same names like BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, and central bank partners that understand liquidity cycles far better than crypto Twitter ever will. Prepare for shock, because what looks boring and quiet right now is exactly how the biggest moves in financial history begin. And in part 1, you must lock this idea into your mind that low volume in XRP at this stage is not a signal of failure. It is a signal of preparation. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now let us go deeper, because this is where the amateurs get shaken out. And the data tells a completely different story than the fear narratives flooding social media. When XRP volume declines while price holds structure, this historically signals a liquidity vacuum forming, not a breakdown. Go back and study every major accumulation phase across assets that later exploded, and you will see the same fingerprint: declining volume paired with tightening ranges. That is not selling pressure, that is patience. That is smart money waiting for permission. And permission always comes from authority signals, not retail sentiment. Look at on-chain behavior where long-term XRP wallets remain stubbornly inactive. Look at exchange balances that are not surging the way they do before real crashes. Look at derivatives funding that has cooled instead of flipped aggressively bearish. This is textbook compression, and anyone telling you otherwise either does not understand market mechanics or does not want you to understand them. And here is where names matter, because credibility matters. Ripple does not operate in isolation. It operates in rooms with the IMF, the World Economic Forum, central bank working groups, and enterprise payment corridors that do not care about daily volume candles. They care about settlement reliability and regulatory clarity. And while retail screams about low volume, the BIS is publishing documents about tokenized liquidity rails. BlackRock is openly talking about blockchain-based settlement layers, and the SEC, despite all the noise, has been forced into procedural restraint that limits its ability to shock the market. Ask yourself why no emergency enforcement action appears when volume is low. Ask yourself why Ripple continues expanding partnerships instead of defending itself publicly. That silence is not weakness. weakness, it is leverage, and this is where the psychological warfare comes in, because low-volume environments are where narratives are weaponized to shake confidence. This is where fake boredom is used to push you out before the real move. And the data backs this up because historically, XRP has made its most aggressive percentage moves immediately after prolonged volume contraction phases. Not during hype, not during euphoria, but during the moments when only the most convicted holders remain. And understand this very clearly. Institutions prefer low volume because it allows positioning without slippage, it allows accumulation without headlines, it allows strategic entry before retail attention returns. And that is why the people who actually move markets prefer silence over excitement. This is not speculation. This is how every major market operates, from equities to bonds to currencies. And XRP sits at the intersection of all three narratives. So when volume drops while infrastructure discussion accelerates behind the scenes, that is not a bearish divergence. It is a signal that the market is being primed for an authority-driven catalyst. And the mainstream refuses to connect these dots because connecting them would expose how predictable this cycle actually is once you stop thinking like a trader and start thinking like a liquidity architect. Now comes the part they really do not want you thinking about, because this is where low volume stops being a chart curiosity and starts becoming a strategic setup for a catalyst that rewrites the narrative overnight. Every major XRP move in history required three ingredients: compression, disbelief, and an external trigger. And right now, all three are aligning. While most people are distracted, the catalyst does not arrive during high volume, because high volume means everyone is already positioned. Catalysts arrive when volume is low because surprise is a weapon. And this is where the FUD machine goes into overdrive to exhaust you emotionally before that trigger hits. You hear the same recycled talking points: demand is gone, interest is fading, money is moving elsewhere, and yet none of that aligns with what Ripple is doing operationally or what global institutions are signaling strategically. Ask yourself why central banks are piloting digital currency settlement layers that mirror XRP use cases. Ask yourself why the IMF keeps emphasizing liquidity efficiency in emerging markets. Ask yourself why the SEC narrative has shifted from aggressive threat language to procedural delays and closed-door negotiations. That is not random, that is positioning. And here is the part that sounds crazy until you realize how often it happens. Catalysts are often announced after positioning is complete, not before. So volume drops first, then the announcement lands, and suddenly the same people who mock the asset are scrambling for exposure. This is why volume dropping is necessary. It clears leverage, it clears weak hands, it clears noise, and when critics scream dead chain, they are unknowingly confirming that the setup is progressing exactly as intended. Defend yourself against the FUD by understanding incentives. No institution accumulates in high-volume environments because that is where price runs away from them. They accumulate in boredom, in apathy, and frustration. And that is exactly the emotional state retail is being pushed into right now. And this is where you need to remember that XRP is not a meme. It is a liquidity instrument designed for institutional rails. Its success does not depend on daily hype. It depends on integration, legal clarity, and infrastructure readiness. And all three are advancing quietly while volume contracts publicly. That contrast is the tell, that divergence is the signal. And when you see social sentiment decay while back-end development accelerates, that is when you know the next move will not ask for permission. It will shock, it will gap, and it will leave anyone who sold out of boredom watching from the sidelines asking WTF just happened. This is not hopium. This is pattern recognition refined by years of watching how capital actually moves when nobody is looking. Now, we confront the part that makes people uncomfortable because it forces a recalibration of what you think XRP is actually worth. Once volume returns with intent, not speculation, price justification in low-volume phases is never about today's candle. It is about tomorrow's liquidity event. When volume drops and structure holds, it creates a spring-loaded effect where even modest inflows can produce outsized price movement, and that is before you factor in institutional scale. Ask yourself this brutal question. What happens to XRP price when a corridor goes live, when a regulatory headline removes uncertainty, when a major asset manager legitimizes tokenized settlement? Do you think volume gently rises, or do you think it explodes into a vacuum that has been deliberately created because that is how repricing events work? And this is why analysts who mock higher XRP targets always ignore liquidity math. XRP does not need billions of dollars in buying to move aggressively in a low-volume environment. It needs narrative confirmation, and that confirmation instantly pulls sidelined capital back in, triggers algorithmic strategies, forces short covering, and reignites derivatives positioning, all in an environment where sellers are already exhausted. That is how violent repricing happens. And the final warning you need to hear right now is this: low volume is the most dangerous time to be complacent, because it is when the biggest moves are born, not when everyone is screaming bullish, not when headlines are euphoric, but when silence dominates and conviction is tested. This is the moment where holders decide whether they are aligned with long-term infrastructure adoption or short-term emotional comfort, because once volume returns, it will not wait for your confirmation. It will not give you time to think. It will move, and it will move fast. And the people who understood what declining volume really meant will not be celebrating loudly. They will be calmly positioned, watching the same media outlets scramble to explain a move. They never prepared their audience for. Respected holders, this is where everything comes together, and where you decide whether this information changes how you see the market or whether you let it fade into the background. Like noise, volume dropping in XRP is not a warning flare. It is a countdown, a silent one, the kind that only matters if you understand who controls liquidity and when they choose to deploy it. History does not reward the loud, it rewards the patient, and XRP has never been a story designed for daily entertainment. It is a system designed for eventual dominance in corridors that move real money. And the most dangerous lie you can believe right now is that nothing is happening because silence is how positioning is hidden, and boredom is how conviction is tested. The mainstream will tell you volume equals interest and low volume equals failure. But the institutions that shape global finance know that low volume equals opportunity when infrastructure is nearing readiness. And that is why this moment matters. Because when the switch flips, there will be no slow rollout, no polite invitation, no second chance at comfort pricing. The repricing will be sudden, it will be justified, and it will feel obvious only in hindsight. So the final question you need to ask yourself is simple. Are you reacting to what you feel or positioning for what you now understand? Because once volume returns with intent, the narrative will change overnight, and the people who ignored this quiet warning will be forced to buy back at levels they never thought possible. Stay sharp, stay aware, and remember, the market never moves when the crowd is ready. It moves when the crowd is bored.